Fabric Gems Boutique is a video podcast where we celebrate the art of quilting. Each episode will be packed with inspiring guests from every corner of the quilting world, sharing their best gems of knowledge, creativity, and passion. Whether you're a seasoned quilter or just getting started, there's something here for everyone to help you create your own gem. Discover the hidden gems of quilting. And now, get ready for Fabric Gems Boutique with your host, Kris OConnor. Hi everyone, I am Kris OConnor with Fabric Gems Boutique, and I am so excited today. I have a special guest, Linda McGehee from gees.com, and I want to share with you her website real quick. She is so interesting that this is the second time I've had her come on here. And she is a teacher. She's a Bernina ambassador. She has some of the most creative items with bags and vests and jackets. And we're going to talk about a few things today. And I just wanted to share her knowledge, her teaching skills, and who knows, maybe you'll learn something new. So I'm going to stop sharing her website, and I am going to bring Linda on. So Linda, welcome to Fabric Gems Boutique. I'm so glad that you're here, and tell us all about you.
Hey, Kris, good to be here. Glad to see you again. I'm actually from a garment background. Oh. And I started sewing at a really young age. And by junior high school, I was making my own clothes for school. And when I started my business several years into my 20s, I wanted to sew for people, but I found out very quickly that the people I wanted to be around were people that wanted to learn how to sew rather than me do it for them. So that was way back in the Ultra Suede days, and the Ultra Suede got me into making handbags. And that's been a basics of my business for a long time. As I got into the bag, somebody told me I needed to go to Quilt Market. So I went down to Houston and had a booth and everything with my Ultra Suede bags. And I discovered that if I really wanted to be in that market, I needed to have something that had to do with quilting or piecing of some kind. Mm-hmm. So I went to a class with a buddy of mine. It was out in Vegas. It was a 5-day course. And the prerequisite was that you be a teacher. So I'm a teacher in the sewing industry. They didn't specify we had to do quilting. So I packed a bunch of fabric into the suitcase and went out to the class. And I discovered in the first 5 minutes that I was in the wrong place for 5 days. I was not prepared for what I was about to learn. So they sort of adopted me and said, oh, you need to buy fat quarters. And I had no idea what a fat quarter was at that point in time. I should have known this little folded piece of fabric wasn't very big. But anyway, I bought a bunch of fat quarters. And one of the first things we were going to do was make triangle blocks. Well, we start drawing the lines and stitching and cutting and having to deal with all these points and everything. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in the wrong place for 5 days. But I had to make the best of it. So as I listened to the teacher and also paid attention to some of the students, that's one of the places I learned the more you open your mouth, the more people realize how little you do know. But I was quiet and observed a lot. Mm-hmm. And it started in my mind that this triangle block thing could be easily done with strips of fabric. And it was kind of sort of a takeoff on a scarf that we made with the Bishop method way back in the late 50s and 60s. So the teacher lectured. The process of this class was the teacher lectured. She left the room and left us with our fabric to do whatever she had told us to do. So, and this is Mary Ellen Hopkins, a real hoot. I sat in the corner, minding my own business, and I did some things that I thought could work with what she was talking about. And lo and behold, I came up with the spiral patchwork technique. So I figured I paid my money as long as I'm quiet in class and don't interrupt the rest of the students. It didn't matter what I did. So I actually have a couple of the pieces that I did with spiral patchwork using fat quarters. And now I'm going to tell you that I don't deal with fat quarters. I like the width of the fabric, at least 45 inches, to do this technique. And when I purchase fabric to do it, I purchase fabric entirely different for piecing than I would for making a garment. I sewed on a limited budget. And I mean, babysitting money was 60 cents an hour. So, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, you got more paid than I did. I got 50 cents an hour.
Well, so I was real careful with my fabric, and I knew that I could scooch pieces up closer and get by on a little bit less fabric. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I realized that I could buy fabric faster than I could make it up. And I changed my mind what I wanted to do with it. And lo and behold, I might be kind of skippy on the amount of fabric I needed for the project by the time I got around to making it. So this is my theory when I'm piecing.
Okay.
When you see a fabric you like,
yeah,
buy at least a yard.
Okay.
If you really like it, buy 2 yards. And if you really, really like it, go ahead and buy 3 yards, because you can always use it for a backing or lining or something like that. That way you have enough. So you want to make sure you have enough. And sometimes you don't know how much that is, because you know how we are. We change our minds from moment to moment. So I know I follow this rule because I recently downsized my studio some, and I found one piece of fabric that I had 3 pieces of. I had a yard cut, a 2-yard cut, and a 3-yard cut. So I know I felt differently about that fabric each time I saw it. But I had plenty of.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there for a minute. So you just found 3 pieces of, so did you buy a 1-yard cut and a 2-yard cut and a 3-yard cut of the same fabric?
Of the same fabric at different times. At different times. I knew I'd seen the fabric. I wasn't sure whether I bought it or not.
Okay.
So I just bought some more. See, I used to be on the road a lot. I might be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and you see stuff you like, you ship it home. Yep. And so it was like Christmas when I got home, because I would have all this fabric that I'd collected along the way, or stuffed in the corners of the suitcases, depending on. But I'm a good collector. Yeah, I've got an assortment, and if I have a storm around here, I'm good to go. I've always got something to do as long as I have electricity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so I want everybody to hear this again. And I'm going to switch cameras here and go this way. If you really like, just one really, get 1 yard. If you really, really like, get 2 yards. And if you really, really, really like, get 3 yards. I love that philosophy.
Oh, and one other thing. If you're getting a stripe, you need to get a minimum of 2 yards, because you might cut the stripe on the lengthwise grain, or you might cut it on the crosswise grain. So you need 1.25 yards, which is 45 inches, to cut on the lengthwise grain, and you'll have 3/4 yard left over to cut on the crosswise grain.
Okay.
So they're stripes, plaids, at least 2 yards.
Great. Okay, so you just got 2 really valuable tips, and I hope that you jotted that all down, because I did. I have an Etsy store, and I can't tell you how many people just purchase like a 1/2 yard, and then they come back to me and say, I want, 1.5 yards, because they want it to go with that previous 1/2 yard. So what a great philosophy. Really, 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 really. And then stripes, because I know a lot of people do bindings. They like to create bindings, and then they buy the stripe, and then they create their bindings. So when they're ready for a project, it's already done and ready to go for your quilt or whatever you're making. So great idea. Great idea. Okay, keep going, Linda. I'm excited.
Well, John Flynn came to our quilt group one time here in Shreveport. And he says, well, when you buy fabric, buy enough. So I look at the pattern. If it calls for 3.5 yards, I'll just go ahead and get 5. So I like that philosophy. You never know how your brain's going to go 2 or 3 months down the line, 2 or 3 years down the line, when you finally get around to working with this particular piece of fabric. You
It's
know, we're fondlers.
Yes, it's so true, because in the moment what you might absolutely love it, but you have no idea, no earthly idea what you're going to do with that, what you're going to make with it. Are you going to quilt with it? Are you going to make a vest? Are you going to make a jacket? What are you going to make
You
with it, right?
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to do with it. You just know you need it. And I
Yes.
like that need term, you
Me
know.
too.
Oh, it's like on the vest that I'm wearing,
Mhm.
I have some Fimo buttons. And I was teaching up at the Vermont Quilt Show, and we were teaching a lot, but they need to allow time for the teachers to go shop too, you know.
Yeah.
So the last day I'm wandering through real quick like, and a lady had these wonderful buttons in her hand. They were on a card and they were in her hand. And I looked at the buttons and thought, those are the perfect buttons for that vest, because I'd made this vest with the piecing technique on one side, thread work on the other, techniques that I adore doing. And I'm not real fond of doing buttonholes. I know the sewing machines make wonderful buttonholes. I just don't like to do it. And who wants to put buttonholes in wrinkled fabric, in thread work, or in top of piecing? It's probably not going to be your best buttonhole. But I adore wonderful buttons. So these buttons just look like the perfect button to go on this vest.
They do.
I don't have any buttonholes because I never intend to button this. But this going back to my story, this lady is holding the card and she put it down. And I thought, ooh, okay, my buttons. And I scooted over close to where she was standing. And by this time, I'm right behind her. And she's still looking at the buttons. So it's not my time to pick them up. And she picks up the card again. And I go, oh, man. And she's in serious mode. You can tell when they're in serious thinking mode. So I
Yes.
stood behind her. She's in line.
Yeah.
And she put the card down again. And she's edging forward, but she's still looking back at the card. So I kind of whispered over her shoulder, are you going to buy those? Because if you are, you need to pick them up. And she looked back at me. Oh, no, you can have them. So guess what? I got the buttons and they are on my vest. And they're just perfect for this.
They
So
are.
when you see something, a fabric, a button, or whatever it happens to be, and you need to add it to your collection, it's important that you go ahead and get it,
Yeah.
because it may not be there the next time around.
Oh, guarantee it won't. I mean, fabric runs only there's only so certain manufacturers have fabric runs over and over again, but there's other manufacturers that it's a one and
One
done.
run, that's it. If you missed it, you missed it.
That's right. And then you're desperately searching for it because it was that perfect fabric. And so you're kind of sweet out of luck if you don't grab it at that particular time. So I see it here with the collections that I have. And once they're done, they're done. And people are like begging, where can I find it? I don't know where you're going to find it, because it's printed. They had their lots, however many they sold, and then whoever bought it, they sold out of it, and now it's done. So
Adios. Adios.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm going to get started showing you, and I think we could chat all day, but
yes,
I'm going to get started showing you how to do the spiral patchwork.
yes.
And spiral patchwork is on the shoulder of this garment. It is a strip piecing technique,
Okay,
and we're going to work with the width of the strips, which is 45 inches.
okay,
You could use a jelly roll, or um, purchase some of those combinations of um, hand dyes and things of that nature.
hmm,
Or you can just cut straight from fabric, whatever suits your fancy. But you want to cut at least 45 inches in length. and you're going to sew the strips together into a set.
Okay.
Now,
When you say a set, it looks like you have how many in this set? 1, 2, 3.
it really doesn't matter how many,
Okay.
but the width needs to be at least 8 inches, 7 to 8 inches. You
Okay.
can go all the way up to 12 inches.
Okay, perfect.
I personally like to use uneven widths of strips just because there's some colors I prefer more than others. Some colors you need because it adds a little bit of a zing to your
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's the last you have of that one. No rhyme, no reason to it. But one thing is important, and generally when I'm starting off students with spiral patchwork, I ask them to make 2 identical sets. And the reason for 2 identical sets is that you can do a match. This is also spiral patchwork.
Cool.
So some of the sets are going up like a hills and valleys.
Mm-hmm.
Some are going down.
Mm-hmm.
So my original thought process was to do this type of technique. Well, in my fat quarters, I discovered that when I'm working with such short pieces of fabric, I don't end up with a bigger piece of fabric because they're all short. So fat quarters would be good to do this much of a garment. But if you want to do an all over garment or a lot on the garment, like this is half, one side of the garment is spiral piece and the other half is spiral patchwork. You need to have longer strips. So if the plan is to match, you need 2 identical sets. So you have to be very, very accurate. I suggest you cut with the same ruler in the same lighting, because sometimes one thread can make a difference as to whether it's easy to match. You've all done those piecing things where you got to match. And accuracy is important if you intend to match. So here I have 2 identical sets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're going to take the opposites like this.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to square the end and use the ruler to square the end so you have a perfect square. If it's not square, then it's going to cause everything to be slightly shifted.
Yeah.
So you might not be able to match. But we're trying to match in this instance. And I'm going to, holding this up, I can only handle one piece at a time, but I'm going to take the outside corner and fold it down on this piece. And I'm going to take the outside corner and fold it down on this piece. So I end up with a triangle that looks like this.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Now I can only handle one piece of fabric at a time. So put a pin in this so you know which way you folded it, because that will affect whether it goes as an uppy or a downy. Okay, so I have folded at a right triangle, and I'm going to place a pin 1/4 inch in and 1/4 inch over. Like you see here, the pin, this is a pivoting point.
Yeah.
The pin is just in the fabric.
Okay.
Then I'm going to take the purple and match it to the orange. So I'm pivoting the fabric around, which is kind of, it's weird and it's twisted. And if yours is weird and twisted, you're probably right. If it's nice and smooth, you did something wrong.
Okay.
So I'm going to twist it and place the pins perpendicular to the area that I'm working with.
Okay.
And I generally put 2, maybe 3 pins in. You will be sewing a straight line, but it will be going around in a spiral.
Okay.
So I'll hold this up in just a second. So I have the two outside edges. The purple is being sewn to the orange, and you can see how this is starting to spiral around.
Yep.
It's a straight line, but it's a spiral.
Okay.
So I will end up with a tube that looks like this.
Oh,
Okay.
sweet. Okay.
So this is your 45-degree angle. Now, this one has already been stitched, and this is the one I started to pin. Look, these are going the same direction.
Yep.
I'm not going to be able, I can still do a neat design, but I'm not going to be able to do the hills and valleys I wanted. That other piece that I folded over is the one that goes the opposite direction.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you're going to end up with a tube. And if I wanted to make a table runner and let it be just pieced, this would be my point. Okay, this long point would be my point.
Yep.
So I would kind of shake the fabric, and this low end, let it kind of form a nice smooth fold, is what I will trim off.
Okay.
And I use a long ruler and trim the fold off.
Okay.
You get an accurate straight line. Do not use scissors down the fold, because sometimes the scissors on one side of the fold, sometimes it's on the other.
Right.
So you want to just trim a little bit off, so that when you open it up, you will have a piece that looks like this.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, if I want to make a table runner, all I need to do is make a triangle, or make this point the same as the other. I might need to take this little strip off and trim that off. If I wanted the table runner to be longer, I would need to make two sets that are going the same direction, and I would remove this piece and attach the other end to this.
Okay.
So I would have twice as much length. But if you just wanted a short table runner, or maybe a placemat, you can just cut this the length that you want it to be. So the purpose of doing this technique is you avoid a lot of waste.
Yeah.
This is similar to some stitch and flip methods, but you have all this extra stitching you have to do. You have waste off the side.
Yeah.
And I'm avoiding the waste. Also, it's just quicker and easier to go this way than it is to do some of those other cutting all these short pieces. No, keep the pieces as long as possible. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. That then you won't get discouraged creating what you're creating if you have a lot longer pieces, and if they're already set up at your 45-degree angle.
Yeah. If you're making a quilt, of course, depending upon the size quilt, you're going to need to add on to it. If you're going, and we'll take a look at some garments that you can see that idea shortly. If you're making just a shirt tail length vest, this is probably long enough to get the length that you need. So we have, see, I've got a bunch of these sets done. And just for the fun of it, take a look at the piece with the black strip and the piece without the black strip.
Big difference.
You have the fabrics you choose can make a difference as to what the end looks like.
Yep.
Okay, we're now going to cut some strips. And I generally cut these strips a little bit wider than the other. I still cut them obviously different widths, so you can get sort of a hills and valleys look.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's a strip that's been cut.
Is that a 2.5, a 3 inch? What is that?
This one's 2 3/4.
Okay.
The one I'm adding to it is 2 1/4.
Okay.
So see, I'm getting an obviously uneven look.
Right.
Okay, let's see if I can. Here we go.
There you go. Yep.
There's my
Yep.
green matching.
Yep. It matches.
So I would do a stitch and flip to put this on a base.
Uh-huh.
And it depends. If I was doing a quilt, it could be batting. If I'm doing a vest, in my area, I much prefer to work with muslin, a good grade of muslin, and do the stitch and flip on that. You need to have a base to hold the pieces together because they're all cut on the bias now.
Right.
But,
Okay.
unless I'm making a winter vest, I don't need batting in it.
Right.
So, and just a little tip, since it crossed my mind, if you're going to put batting in a vest, make the underarm a half a size larger.
Okay.
So when you're cutting this out, make it just a little bit larger because you're generally going to wear it over a bulkier garment, and it's actually bulkier as it is. So I would have, for my area, I would have winter vest and summer vest.
Okay.
Actually, mine are all have muslin in them. I don't think
Okay.
I have any with batting in them that I'm going to show you. Okay, so we will build this until it's large enough to cut my garment or my quilt or wall hanging or my pillow, whatever it is I want to do.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the basics of spiral patchwork. Whoops, I forgot an important step. Okay, let's get it back here. Let's say you got to this step and your strips aren't matching. What are you going to do? You can start over. You can get bent out of shape and throw it in the trash. Or you can say, who cares whether it matches? Perhaps you like this look better anyway.
Yep.
So
Yep.
to tell you the truth, I only have one sample to show you, and I've already showed you that matches. The rest of my samples are all not matched because I really don't care about having a match. It's a lot more fun. And it's kind of an adventure. Well, now that I said that, I just lied. I went to a store. I lived in West Virginia and I had a lot of wool. And then I moved to Florida. Then I moved up to Louisiana, and I had all this wool fabric, a lot of it herringbone, that I hadn't made. I'd collected it over 10 or 15 years. It wasn't going to happen. So I just sent it to my cousin up in the North Country. Then I go into the store and I found a piece of fabric that intrigued me. It wasn't the prettiest piece of fabric. It was sort of a brown background and it had this wonderful red swirl in it. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, so I bought 5 yards. So
Love it.
I get home and cut it into 1.5-inch strips because I could make that into the look of herringbone.
That's cool.
So these strips were all cut the same width. They were 1.5 inches, I think. And so every other point
Yep.
is matched, and it does have the look of herringbone.
Yep. Sure
And
does.
see how that red swirl just
Yep.
kind of cut up. Some
Yep.
of these big prints really cut up very nicely. And I made one of my most favorite vests. I don't have it anymore, but I made one of my most favorite vests to look like that. And out of the scraps from that vest,
Oh, wow.
it's a yoke. So it's the same thing, but this time the pieces are matched.
That is so
You
cool.
decide, do you want to match it or you not want to match it? And you have to leave yourself open to the adventure of what it's going to look like. You have something in your mind, But as it starts to evolve, a lot of fun stuff can happen. So just be open for change. It's all right.
Well, I kind of like that idea. And the reason I like that idea is my brother's a very high end interior designer up in the Minneapolis area. And, you know, when he would come to visit back in the day, he used to drive me crazy. Quit being so matchy matchy. He just can't stand the matchy matchy stuff. You know, there's just, you know, let it flow and let it be art and or whatever it is, design, clothes, it doesn't matter. Just, you know, when I used to teach art, the kids would get upset if they'd color outside the lines. Let it go, because
It's
it's all
okay.
eye of the beholder. I mean, just there is no exact way to do it. Whatever you love, that's what you do.
Abs- Absolutely. And just get over it. This is not life threatening. We're doing this for fun.
Yes.
And if it
Yeah.
were life threatening, do something about it. But sometimes that adventure is what really makes things happen and really adds the spark to your piece.
Well, and it's visually appealing. It's visually appealing when it's not so matchy matchy.
Absolutely. Now,
Mhm.
this is one of the pieces with the fat quarters from that class I took when I was supposed to be doing something else.
Oh, wow.
So you can see how long it is. It's not a very big piece of fabric.
Yep.
Uh, Also, this is where I learned that you're supposed to make allowances for a seam allowance. If you cut a strip 3/4 of an inch, you're only going to have a visible
Mm.
piece.
Yeah, I
That,
learned that trick the hard way too.
but I also have, and there are times when you do want narrow strips. So I have tricks uh, that I like to tell when I'm by a machine on how to make that narrow strip really look even. Because sometimes the narrow strips are the ones that show up, particularly if they're in a high contrast color,
Yeah.
they show up that they were uneven.
Yeah.
And there is a point where it's art, and another point where, well, she really should have done a little bit better job of stitching that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to make the decision. Now, in between these, because I used to do heirloom sewing, I've put some entredot beading or beading where I can run a ribbon to, and that ribbon is what's adding a little bit of a contrast to the piece. You can see
Yeah.
where there's ribbon and where there's not.
Yeah,
But this
absolutely.
is what, and these are fabrics I would have never bought before, but I just bought it. It's like, it's a fat quarter. It's not a big deal. So,
But
um,
what a fun thing to do with your fat quarter, right?
yeah. And this is another group, and I really plan to match. And some of the strips I cut, those rulers that have 1/8 inch marks on them. I cut some strips 1 3/8 inches and some 1.5 inches. And when you're working with smaller pieces, it does make a difference.
Hmm.
But if you're trying to match, you got to have all the 1 3/8 pieces 1 3/8 inches, and all the 1 1/4 pieces 1 1/4 inches.
Right.
Well, I discovered when I started doing the stitch and flip that I had cut one piece 7/8 of an inch and one piece 3/4 of an inch. But by putting a black strip in between,
Uh-huh.
you have the illusion that the points match. See right here,
Yeah.
really they would match, but over here they wouldn't. But it's the illusion that they would match.
Yeah, no kidding. That is awesome.
So there's all sorts of ways. And here's another one down here, this white one right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you really study it,
Well, yeah, if you really, really look at it, you're right. It doesn't match. But if you just like, okay, you pointed it out. Now I see it. If you don't point it out,
some of these things you just need to get over it.
yeah.
I've I let the Virgo part of me, the real have to be so perfect part. I was started giving that up in my 40s.
Good for
It's
you.
like, this is not it. It ain't no big deal. And um, not everything you make is going into competition. Maybe none of it's going into competition. And nobody really knows unless you tell them.
Right.
So sometimes it's not worth telling them. It's, I was telling you just to have an understanding about how you can cover up.
Yes.
But when this goes in a garment or goes on the wall, or and the general public's looking at it, I'm not going to explain that to them because they wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about anyway.
Yep.
So you
Yeah.
just have to decide.
Well, women tend to give out too much information, and we have to learn to keep quiet because people give you compliment, and then you'll say, "Oh yeah, but look at this spot; it doesn't match." And look at this. Who cares? Let it go. Just keep your mouth quiet.
Yeah, my husband went to a Jenny Buyer event with me, and in the course of the week, they had a non-participants class. So basically, what that was a class for the husbands,
Nice.
and they made a block that was in browns and beiges. It wasn't even. I mean, I like color, you can tell, but when he brought the piece back to the room that night, he said, if they'd have told me I was supposed to match, I would have matched that. But I still have the piece. I'm probably going to make a pillow out of it. And it's been signed from the teachers that were there,
Cool.
and all. And he did a great job. You don't need to look that close all the time. If you
No.
look at an oil painting from a distance, it could be phenomenal and everything looks just perfect. But when you get up close to it, you can see there's a splatter of one color or a glob of another one. And it doesn't quite look the same when you're looking at it 10 inches away
Right.
as it does when you're 10 feet away.
Yeah.
So it's, this is okay. We're doing this for fun. We are not in the have to. They don't need nobody needs what you and I are doing. They want it. And that's an entirely different scenario.
It is.
Now, this was done partially on the serger.
That's pretty.
And you can see the narrow rolled edge looks like a tiny corded piping.
Yep.
And this is just the leftovers from a vest that was made.
Yeah, pretty.
So let's take a look. Oh, by the way, I did write a book on this subject, and it's called Spiraling Schemes in Chromatics. The book is now out of print, but I have it as downloadable on my website at gees.com. And
Nice.
Ghee is spelled exactly like clarified butter, but I've been called Ghee as a nickname because nobody could pronounce my last name for a lot of years. Way back, it started off in about the 5th grade. So it wasn't until the pandemic that people started understanding about ghee, clarified butter.
Yeah.
So if you're ever looking for me, you can go online and go to Ghee, Ghee. And when you see all this stuff about butter, because that comes up first now, I used to be the only thing coming up. Scroll down until you see zippers or anything to do with sewing patterns, books, and things like that. And that's me. Okay. I'm the sewing part of it, not the butter part.
Yes.
So to help you remember, Ghee. I was planning to have this.
I have it scrolling across the bottom just for everybody to know how to get to you.
Good job. Thank you, Kris. There. And I've also added some other garments to the pages so you can see some garments that were made since this book came out. This fabric was a beautiful print. It was a Benartex print with tulips on it, combined with black. Notice the points don't match. That's okay. And I used the flower to create a 3D applique.
Beautiful.
So it really has, that's been a fun garment, and I still wear it, even though it was made several years ago. Some of your art pieces are just timeless.
Very much so.
Very much. Let's take a look at some other pieces. Well, these just happen to be here. So this is from a jelly roll. And you see the pieces are all the same width.
Yep.
And I'm going to need to be creative to continue the stitching with this,
Okay.
because in my mind right now, it's just a little bit blah. I might add corded piping to go in between the pieces. I might also do some thread work on top of it. It just, I don't know how my brain's going to go the day I get ready to continue working on this.
Right.
So we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe in a couple of years or this summer, who knows? We'll wait and see. Sometimes, okay, well, a lot of times in quilting, you see samplers.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a sampler of techniques that I like to do. There's spiral patchwork on this shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and spiral patchwork right here,
Mm-hmm.
Paper piecing right there,
Okay.
pin tucks in these two spots, different types of pin tucks,
Okay.
and then thread work and couching over here. So if we were doing a sampler of techniques that I like to do, this is something that I would work on. And you always start off with a piece that's larger than you want.
Okay.
And the leftovers determine what size bag you make.
Oh, how cool.
So isn't that fun? You can
Yes.
only see one side of the bag at a time, so they don't have to be matchy-matchy, the same on both sides.
Nice. Love it.
So at one of the market shows, a salesman gave me a bundle of fat quarters.
Yeah.
This is sort of a tone on tone. And there
Pretty.
are 30 some pieces in it.
Wow.
On the back, there's at least one strip of each piece.
That's pretty.
On the front, I put together certain color combinations.
Yep.
So I have more pinks over here and right here. I really want that front, the browns and beiges. So they're right here and here,
Yep.
to sort of cut this up.
Yep.
The shoulder has a little bit more teal and orange added to it.
Well, you give it a lot of visual interest with the 3 different styles.
So it gives it you can put combinations together, or if you had
Sure.
fat quarters, this is the way you could use to build it to be a little bit larger. Now, I really adore my thread work, but this time there is thread work on top of the piecing.
Yep.
So let's back up just a minute. Remember when we opened the tube up and
Yep.
we got this big piece?
Yep.
This is where you add the thread work.
Oh,
And
cool.
you're going to add it going across this direction.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you cut these strips in the 2 or 3 inches wide and stitch on them, because they're biased, you're going to stretch the fabric and distort it. So you wanted the fabric to stay as large as possible, as long as possible. And the thread work has been added. Then it was cut into other strips. Now this is a group of hand-dyed fabrics plus this batik.
Nice.
And that's one piece of fabric. So when this lining fabric was cut up, you can see sometimes you see a little bit more pink, sometimes you see the red, sometimes you see the blue. When
Yep.
you're spiraling, you have no idea what's going to show up where, and it's okay. You can also tell the least favorite thing I like to do is close the opening. So this garment was made several years ago, and I still have not closed the opening inside the lining. And it probably won't ever happen, but that's okay. Also notice the tiny corded piping that's in between each set.
Yep.
If that were not there, you would say something's missing. It's like on the last strips I showed you a while ago. It just needs something else to add a spark. The corded piping is adding a spark in between each seam.
You know what I like about that, even though, you know, it's on the diagonal, the threading and the corded piping, even though it's busy, it's not busy. It gives your eye visual appeal. It like moves your eye all around on the art piece, kind of like artwork. You know, you want your eye to move around. It absolutely does that.
Well, you know, we spend there a lot of time waiting in line for things, particularly if you go to a show. You need to entertain the people behind you, so you need to have something on the back of your garment too.
And I know that everybody talks to you. I mean, that's how I met you at Dallas Quilt Show last year, or a year, yeah, last year. And, you know, we became fast friends because I loved what you do.
With this is another one, and I don't have the vest that was originally made anymore, but I had enough left over to do just the front of the vest.
Yeah.
So, and notice I don't plan a line to go straight across in the middle of my body. I don't need to draw attention there.
Right.
So it's lower on one side than the other. So it's not straight across in the middle. And that's the plan. So I actually start off by making one whole side pieced, one whole side thread work. Then I cut the pieces and mismatched them.
Nice. Okay. That makes
So,
sense.
because I didn't have as much of the fabric left over, the back of this one is plain.
Uh-huh.
We still have buttons, although no buttonholes.
Yep.
And then the bag to go along with it.
Super
I
cute.
like a vest in a bag, a skirt in a bag, but I don't want a vest, a skirt, and a bag all the same thing.
Right.
But you
It's
you can
matchy,
have
but
all
it's
three
not.
pieces. You just don't wear them at the same.
Yeah, it's matchy, but it's not really matchy.
Yeah, yeah. This is the leftovers of one of my Fairfield garments,
Nice.
and I'll probably take that to the show in August. Where in
Plano.
Pano.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll probably take it to the
Well,
show there.
well, Plano.
Um, it's I think it's the second weekend of August. But
Yes,
this
it's
is the
August 8th and
leftovers
9th.
from that big garment.
Yep.
It's a lot of color. Anytime you're doing a runway piece, you want to attract attention from the other designers.
Yep.
And so this piece actually got the attention. But this is the leftover vest that I got to wear while the other piece was traveling around the world. Um, and of course, I have a bag to go along with it.
Super cute. Love it.
And somebody said, "Why did you put that on the back side? That doesn't even go with it." And I beg to differ, because that piece, when it's cut up, right here it is, there it is, here it is. It's in a little fold here. It's cut up all over this,
Wow.
but it doesn't show the same as it does on the back.
No, it sure doesn't.
Remember, LeMays were kind of popular a few years ago,
Yeah.
and I had a plaid that I cut on point for the back.
Uh-huh.
And since I had the bias already cut, the strips were cut on the bias and inserted, but when they were spiraled, they went straight.
Okay. Oh, look at that.
And then see, the corded piping just adds to it.
It sure does.
And the embroidery is from my embroidery designs with three-dimensional flowers. That's computerized embroidery.
Nice.
One of my friends made this wall hanging for me. You know, there's a lot of fruit fabric out there, or vegetables. I think everybody needs a quilt hanging in their kitchen.
How fun. Oh, that's fun.
So she's used strips going in between the pieces to give the illusion that the
Yep.
points match,
Yep.
and use some raw edge applique just cutting
Wow.
some of the designs out for
The
her fruit
basket
basket
too. I mean,
at
that
the
is
top.
so cool. Very cool.
Pillows. Pillows are fun. And Fairfield sent me 3 pieces of fabric and asked me to make a pillow. And I needed to have a little bit more for those 3 pieces of fabric. So I think they sent the jade, the lavender or lilac, and the blue. So I added a strip of red from the same company, and then the entree beading so I could put ribbon in it.
That is really cool. I love that. Love that.
And some of the pieces that you saw earlier, the stages, I mean, have been made into a pillow.
Love
So
it.
we have a larger corded piping going in between to kind of pull the black in there. And the
Yeah,
black really does make a difference
it
in how
does.
the finished look is of this pillow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Lorelei uh, made some fabric that was like um, uh, the strips, but they were one piece of fabric. So you could cut them apart or you can leave them as they are, like a jelly roll. So
Gotcha.
our jelly roll was yardage already put together. So I did want a little bit different width. So I just put right sides together and stitched a seam in
Nice.
it. So I've got some different widths here.
Yeah.
So you have all sorts of options of sort of cheating, if we can
Yeah.
call it that,
Yeah.
or shortcutting.
Well, they have cheater quilting fabric that you could use for that.
Yeah,
I've got a couple here. I've got 3 different, ones that are they call cheater because they're already in their squares, right?
yeah.
And yeah,
So you can take that in a spiral patch, or a stripe may look like it was going to be pieced.
nice.
Um,
I love that.
so, so there's all sorts of fun ways to play. And another group.
Oh, that's pretty. That's a nice long vest. Love that.
Yeah, my vest pattern is a tunic length. It's a shirt tail length, and I also make a longer length. There's 3
Love.
different lengths in it.
Yeah.
It's a good basic pattern, and you can do all sorts of playing with it. Get the pattern to fit, don't gain and lose weight, and you can just go. In my area, I don't need a lot of jackets, but a vest is the 3rd piece to your outfit that makes your ensemble look a little bit more complete.
Well, it's a
So,
statement piece. It's
pardon me?
definitely a statement piece.
Yeah, yeah. So you need, and there. Let's see that this is pieced all the way around.
That's pretty. That's really pretty. That's a great springtime vest.
And I didn't mind the piecing going all the way down to the bottom, but in the front, I had to do something to change.
Yeah.
It just looked like Joseph's coat of many colors, too much of it. So there's a piece going across
Yeah.
on one shoulder and then somewhere in the waist section, just to break things up.
Yeah.
In making the long length, the colors, well, you saw how long a spiral piece is.
Yeah.
It's only so long.
Right.
But I wanted to go the full length. But I didn't want all that color down below. So what I did was create a black group that was black from different bolts.
Oh.
This happens, this is a chintz, so it has a little bit of a shine to it.
Yeah.
And then there's a matte black. And the strips were cut a lot wider.
Okay.
Some of these, that's probably 5 or so inches wide down here.
Okay.
You can see some different widths. What the fabric was one that went from one color to another.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way the fabric was printed. This is from the pointillist palette. So the color changes going across the grain. So what I did was on this piece, I added the black section.
Okay.
Like a black section or whatever color you're choosing. And you're making the more colorful section. When you open it up, sew them together.
Okay.
So when you look at this from a distance, you see the dark down at the bottom. It's still pieced, and you're working your way up to where most of the color is by your face. You
Yeah.
want everybody to eventually look at your face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did not plan for this vest to close and overlap. This narrow opening is sort of an optical illusion that your waist is a lot narrower than it might possibly be.
Yeah.
So I have some chain combining the buttons just for a different look in the front.
And no buttonholes. Woohoo!
Yeah, well, I got a big buttonhole here.
Well,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot with the chains. That reminds me a lot of the 70s, actually. You know, chains were big back then.
Yeah, and they're probably going to be coming around. I know bell bottoms are coming back. So
Oh, yeah, they definitely have come back.
yeah.
Sure. All
Now,
right, let's show us just a couple more things and we will wrap this up.
okay, we have a bag
Mm-hmm.
with piecing and all sorts of batiks, the yoke of a garment, another couple of bags over here, the leftovers of the long vest that we just looked at,
Oh, look at that.
and this is the back. I decided to put a little bit more detail in the back and not do that same detail in the front. But when I did it, it was just so plain. I
Yep.
couldn't handle it. So I came back and added a little bit of the beading to it.
I like
But
that.
it's still, I think it needs a little bit more, but I still wear it. It's still
I
fun.
don't know. I think yeah, I really like it that way. It gives it the visual interest where you want it from, you know, from your arms up, right? You may not want to have all that below that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
these are mismatched earrings that I just took the hook off of.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And serging or overlocking, depending upon what you want to call it, has become really popular.
Yes.
Rather than piecing with the right sides together in a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I put wrong sides together and use the narrow rolled edge so it looks like there is tiny corded piping
Oh,
in
look at that.
between each row.
Oh, brilliant.
And also, this is a stripe. That's the lengthwise grain.
Yeah.
And here we have the crosswise grain.
Yep. Oh,
And
wow.
that was the extra piece of fabric that I needed to make this look good.
Wow.
So here
Yep. Yep.
we'll go with that.
Beautiful.
So you really can do a lot with spiral patchwork.
Mm-hmm.
I have table runners, wall hangings. Here's one wall hanging in the back. There's a lot that you can do with spiral patchwork. It really is fun to get your creative juices going. So I hope you'll take a look at the website and pick out some fabric from your stash or your collection and put it together into something with spiral patchwork. And please send me pictures. I love to see pictures. You can send pictures to gees.com, GHEES.com.
Yes.
Have fun with your sewing. It's been
Absolutely.
a pleasure, Kris.
Absolutely. You've inspired me today. I'm already thinking in my mind with all this fabric behind me, and I got more jelly roll stuff over there. I'm kind of thinking, I might have to put something together. I mean, you've really
grab a jelly roll and then get one other real zinger for it.
Yep.
A lot of times it's a dark, sometimes it's a bright.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Linda. I mean, I think I hope that you all learned something today because she gave us a lot of great tips, and I am going to put her website again, obviously at the bottom. It's Ghees, GHEES.com, and connect with her. She's got some great items there. She's got some great patterns. If you saw a pattern that you loved, she sells it all right on her website. So I encourage you to step outside the box and not be so matchy and have some fun. I mean, the older I become, the more fun and more flamboyant I want to be, and not be so one color boring. So Linda, thank you so much. This will be on our channel shortly. And just to all of you, just say thank you to Linda. Send her a note. Watch the video. Share it with your friends, people who love to have things that are done differently. My name is Kris OConnor and with Linda McGehee, and I'm with Fabric Gems Boutique Video Podcast. We thank you for being here today. Have a great, great day.
Thanks, Kris.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new podcast. There's always something new to learn. See you next time.